Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 60. So tonight we're going to talk about the importance of clarity. And I had to chuckle because as I was preparing my notes for this evening's show, I was having some issues getting clear about what I wanted to say. And so the irony of that is not lost on me, since we're talking about how important clarity is. But I know that if I just trust and stay open to that intuitive guidance that comes in every week, that I'll be steered in the right direction, even if it has nothing to do with what I actually wrote down on the page in front of me this evening. So I want to start by talking about the importance of clarity, by talking about clearing space. And as often is the case when I have these topics come to me, there were some synchronicities going on. There was an occasion earlier this week or last week when I really saw very clearly this whole idea of clarity and the muddiness of frequency and the importance of clarifying that. And sometimes when I have a vision like that, when I have a revelation, even though I'm a verbal person, words are really important to me and I love words. Sometimes it's hard to kind of put that into words. And then at the same time, I actually did my first official space clearing for a client this week. And so I thought that was actually a good place to start talking about this idea of clarity, because interestingly, it's become a fairly mainstream idea now, this idea of clearing space. Realtors use this a lot. People, when they go into a new home or a business, they tend to clear space. And interestingly, that's extremely important, but it's also really important to clear your own space as you're in it. And essentially what happens is that frequencies change. And especially if you're someone who has been holding space for a long time, who takes on the frequencies of others, who is open to both the clear and muddy and kind of like, oh, give it to me, then you tend to bring that home with you. You tend to bring that into your business with you. Everybody who walks into your home or business has these frequencies around them that maybe don't necessarily, they're not resonant with the frequencies that you'd like, with the intention you'd like to set. And we're going to talk about all of those things in a little bit more depth tonight. But essentially, when we clear space, we do this using intention. And there's a couple of different ways we do this. A lot of people like to use smoke, or they call this smudging. I actually have asthma and I don't respond well to smoke, so I use sound. And energy workers are taught to clear space because when we have a session with someone on the table, there's a lot of stuff that gets released and energetic blah that kind of comes off of someone in a session. And our job as an energy worker in that space is to hold the space so the person feels safe enough to release that. But then after we're done, it's also our job to clear the space out and to clear ourselves out so that we don't walk away with all of that kind of gunk that we pick up as we're doing sessions on people. So I've been clearing space for almost 20 years. Either in my own space, in my own body, in a professional setting as a body worker and an energy worker. And it's a service I just started offering officially in the Tucson and surrounding areas, clearing space for people. And so I did that this week for someone who was moving into a new business space. And it was just so beautiful and wonderful. And we're going to do a little bit of what I did there in our meditation tonight. But I want to talk about the importance of clarity within your own physical body and the space within and around your physical body. And we talk about this every week. So we've got an energetic body, our spiritual body or soul. We've got the physical body, which is also has an energetic component. We've got an emotional body, which has an energetic component. And then we've got a mental body, which has an energetic component. And then there's lots of other fancy, there's the etheric body and the auric body, and we could go into anatomy. That's not what we're doing tonight. But the idea is that we need clarity on all levels of our being. We need clarity in all of those bodies in order to heal. So we've talked about healing in terms of clarity, expansion, and harmony. So the clarity and the expansion is what brings us into harmony, which is my word for healing. We bring disharmony into harmony. And so we've done a few episodes in the last couple of weeks where we worked on expansion, where we worked on getting bigger in our space and in our body and really allowing our light to shine. So that's all work with expansion. But the thing is, if you've got expansion without clarity, you're not going to get to that harmony. You can expand all day long, but if you're expanding and you're still kind of muddy and unclear and unintentional in the way that you're living, then that harmony is not going to come. And I'm already so far off my notes. I knew that was going to happen tonight. And that's okay, because perhaps my clarity this evening is just allowing this to flow so that it comes out in a way that makes sense. And so that when we get into the meditation we're going to do for clarity, you really understand why this is important. So I talked a few weeks ago about a lighthouse, and then we used that metaphor a little bit again last week. And if you recall a few weeks ago, I talked about the light box, the actual glass around your light, which is like your spirit, getting dirty. And I talked a lot, I think that was last week, about what makes that light dirty, what makes us dim our light. And it's all the same kind of things, like past trauma, like getting triggered by past trauma, fear-based core beliefs, and all of those things, those fears. Essentially, it's fear. It's fear that muddies our frequency. It's fear that makes our windows dirty. And so I talked about a few weeks ago the fact that ships couldn't see our light if our windows were dirty. But what I didn't talk about is the fact that we can't see out if our windows are dirty. If our windows around our light are dirty, then we're kind of huddled in the dark. We have no idea what's going on outside of us. Things are just kind of bouncing around and getting reflected to us. Those fear-based beliefs, those assumptions we have, the past trauma that triggers us when certain things come into our emotional field. All of this is just kind of bouncing around in the dark when we don't have clarity, when we don't have our windows clean, to use that metaphor. And so it's really important to be able to see what's happening. You can't drive a car if your windshield's so dirty you can't see, you're going to hit something. And energetically, most of us are driving around with a completely clouded up, blocked up windshield, or we've got like a tiny little, I used to do that when I lived in Illinois, just clear out like a tiny little spot of snow and ice so that I could at least make it down to the end of the block until my defrost kicked in. And if you've ever done that, it's really scary. You really can't see, you have no peripheral vision, you could really just see like what's right in front of you. And energetically and mentally and emotionally, a lot of us are driving around with a dirty windshield, with a tiny little opening, and we're really not seeing any kind of big picture. We're not living with intention, and we can't heal. We can't have harmony if we don't have clarity. If we have a bunch of muddy frequencies, you've probably heard music that you didn't care for before that sounded really strident or really dissonant, or maybe you have a kid and you've gone to hear your kid play in the beginning band and everybody's really out of tune and it's kind of a cacophonous mess. So that's muddy frequencies. We want to clear our frequencies up. We want to live with clarity, and so much of that is about intention. Whew, all right. I have a very strange grid tonight. I've never set a grid up like this before. And I was really nervous before we started. And I know this meditation is going to be amazing. So I just want to be clear about how we're going to get there. And then we'll get into the meditation. So when we have muddy frequencies, we can have muddy frequencies on any of those layers of our being that I mentioned. We can have muddy frequencies on the mental layer and the mental body. And what that looks like is not thinking clearly, having memory problems, having what people call brain fog. And of course, there's a physical component to this as well in many cases. We're just talking about energy tonight on this show. But there's an energetic component to your physical problem too. If you have a physical issue like dementia, there's an energetic component to that, absolutely. And so clearing up the energy, while it may not get rid of the physical problem, you can greatly improve how things present by dealing with the energy, because energy is what's underneath everything, including physical problems, including mental and emotional problems. So if you've got a lot of muddiness in your mental frequencies, you're not thinking clearly, you're having a hard time remembering things, you maybe feel just completely overwhelmed, like you have way too much to do all the time, that's kind of mental muddiness. So then emotionally, the way I actually see this is in terms of vision. So when you have a lot of muddiness in your emotional field, you're not seeing things clearly. You're not seeing situations clearly. You're not seeing your relationships clearly because you're in a reactive mode rather than a responsive mode. You're being triggered by past trauma. You're being triggered by those core beliefs, by that idea, maybe that you're not enough or there isn't enough, scarcity, that you're not safe. And so you're not seeing situations clearly. You're not seeing relationships clearly because there's a lot of muddiness in that emotional field. And that tends to lead us to get triggered, to kind of overreact, sometimes to cut ties with people because we're not really recognizing the truth of the situation because we're muddy in our emotional body. And then in the physical body, muddiness manifests as pain and disharmony or disease. And it's interesting, I've been having a lot of pain this week. And so I went to bed the other night and I was laying there like, what is going on? And then I recognized all of this kind of muddiness in the other areas of my body, this emotional thing that had come up that I hadn't fully released, that I hadn't fully let go of. And that was kind of causing pain. So as always, all of these things are interrelated. So you can have physical muddiness that's causing mental anguish and mental muddiness. You can have emotional muddiness like I did that's causing physical pain and physical muddiness. These things are so interwoven that we really can't pull them apart. It's kind of like one of those Chinese finger traps. Like you're not getting your fingers out. Everything is interwoven when we're talking about mental, emotional, physical, and energetic. So the other thing I want to mention, and I sort of debated, like, do I bring this up or not? How do I talk about this? But I really think it's important. And I see this in a lot of places. And I see very dichotomous, very opposing views of this sometimes. And right before I started, I was thinking, the older I get, the more gray I see, the less black and white I see. And the more I see when I look at both sides of this, that they're both correct. Neither one of these things is right and the other one is wrong. So I want to talk a little bit about picking up energy. So a lot of people, including me, would say that you pick up energy as you go about in your day. And I'm going to use poor Costco. I'm always picking on Costco, but I've talked about Costco a lot. I really couldn't go into Costco for a long time because there were so many frequencies in there that didn't feel good to me. It triggered my feeling of safety. I felt unsafe. And so I'm picking up these energies. Absolutely, I'm picking up energies. I do think we pick up energy from outside of ourselves. And some people would say that's all it is. You're picking up energy from someone else and your energy is fine, but you're picking up energy. But that's not the whole story because as I just mentioned, I go into Costco. Yes, I'm picking up energy. I'm picking up these frequencies, but the frequencies are triggering something in me. They're triggering my doubts about my safety and I start to feel unsafe. And then I get triggered and then it's kind of like a vicious cycle. And so I would say that we absolutely pick up energy from people and situations around us. But I would also say, as my friend Paul would say, those things won't trigger you unless there's something in you to be triggered. And so it's kind of a two-way street. And sometimes if we think about something like, I've heard, sometimes we'll say someone is toxic. That person is toxic. Well, that may be true. The frequencies that person is putting out might be something that we don't want to be around. But first of all, the word toxic is very judgmental. And also recognizing something as toxic without acknowledging that those frequencies exist in me. And maybe I've chosen to let go of those. I've been intentional and I've allowed myself to release those frequencies. And now I see it in someone else and it makes me uncomfortable. That's completely okay. But recognizing that it is a two-way street. We don't just put everything off on someone else and say, that person is toxic. I don't want anything to do with them. And deciding that you don't want anything to do with someone is completely okay. I'm not saying that's not okay. But what I'm saying is that putting it completely outside of yourself does not serve you, because there's something in you that's reacting to that person or situation. I'm using a person here, but it could be a situation. There's something in me that reacts to crowded situations, that reacts to a place like Costco and triggers that feeling like I'm not safe. There's too much going around and going on around me and I don't feel safe. So I just wanted to mention that that's an important component of clarity. And I think I had a moment of clarity about that right before we got onto the show here, because I was thinking about these as like two kind of opposing views. Like, oh, I pick up energy from other people. Oh, but the energy's in me. Guess what? It's not mutually exclusive. Yes, you're picking up energy from other people and the energy is also in you. And so it's very important to clear externally, absolutely, to clear the space around us, to clear our homes and our businesses. It's very important to do that. But it's equally important to have clarity, to clear the space inside of us, because if we are a clear vessel, if our lighthouse is shining bright and those windows are sparkling clean and we're grounded, then we don't get triggered. A few weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, I talked about how I went into the gym and there was a really angry woman and I could feel her angry energy. So in that situation, I didn't get triggered. So I could have gotten really angry right back at her. And I've absolutely done that, especially while driving. When someone's angry, I'll respond angrily myself. So yes, I'm picking up their energy, but it's triggering something in me and that's why I'm responding. So in that example that I gave a couple weeks ago, when I went to the gym and there was kind of an angry energy, I didn't let it trigger me. And interestingly, my response to anger tends to be fear. And that's really common. So as I mentioned in that story, I walked into the room, I felt that like prickly, spiky energy. And because I was intentional, if I had not been intentional about that, I probably would have walked in, been like, ugh, and then just walked out and maybe not even known why. Or maybe known why and then blamed that woman. That angry woman won't let me in that room. And that's kind of what I'm talking about when you're putting something outside yourself. Instead, it was like, oh, I recognize this lady's really angry. I'm not going to let that trigger anything in me. I'm just going to expand in love and bring my beautiful lighthouse into this room and let these energies coexist. And we have a really hard time with coexisting energetically and physically and mentally and emotionally, especially right now. And I think some of that is coming to the surface for a reason. We bring things to the surface and look at them so that we can finally resolve them. So speaking globally right now or nationally or however you want to look at it, the more we can see that we're having these opposing views, it gives us the opportunity to stop seeing things in black and white and start seeing shades of gray, because I think that is actually clarity. And again, nothing like what I wrote down tonight, but this feels really true to me and it feels important to be talking about this. So as I mentioned, most of us are living unintentionally, and that puts us in a victim mentality. And that's hard to hear. Someone said that to me a little while ago, that I was kind of playing the victim. And I was like, I've worked really hard not to do that. And I got triggered a little bit by that. because there was something about it that was true. And that's kind of how triggering works. When like, there's a little bit about that that's true. And maybe it's only like 2% that's true. But if we're not intentional, then that triggering takes over and we react rather than respond. That's the whole reason that we meditate. That's the whole reason that we live a spiritual life. That's the whole reason that we're trying to bring clarity to our lives, to our mind, to our emotions, to our spirit, to our physical body. When we live intentionally, that is one of the big ways that we bring clarity. So when someone says something to you, like, yeah, you might get triggered about it. And sometimes I do. But then I tend to go home and go like, okay, well, why did I get triggered and what was in there? And I look for the clarity in that situation. And so when we're in a victim mentality, it feels like things are just happening to us. Everything feels external. It's like I'm in this situation. There's nothing I can do about it. And it's interesting because we talk a lot about how we don't have control. And ultimately, we don't have control of anything outside of ourselves. But we absolutely have control of ourselves. We absolutely can have control of our perceptions through being intentional, through being clear. And so I have a really fun example for this. And I want to talk a little bit about the swamp of sadness, and that's from The Neverending Story, which was a really popular movie when I grew up. And there's all these memes about how like an entire generation of children was traumatized by the swamp of sadness. So this character gets stuck in the swamp of sadness and he can't get out. And I won't give it away because it's actually, maybe you haven't seen the movie, but this is a murky place of stuckness. And it's a literal representation of getting stuck in those like murky emotions like sadness or depression, anything that's kind of heavy, guilt and shame and all that stuff, anger, any of those dark kind of heavy emotions. But here's the thing that perhaps would have changed the whole course of this movie had this character known this at the time. We have the power to completely change that swamp. We have magic water purifying tablets that we can drop in the swamp of sadness, and all of a sudden it's not a swamp anymore. It's not murky. It's completely clear, and we can see everything, including our way out. We can start to move forward again because we can see, because we brought clarity to a situation. And that's the importance of clarity. The importance of clarity is that you can't figure out how to get through something, how to get out of something if you can't see what's going on. You can't move forward if you can't see more than a foot in front of you because you don't have clear vision. And this is such an important thing that, like, again, I had this vision the other day where I just like, it was like my mind was blown at the importance of this, the importance of being clear. And being clear starts with intention. And we're going to work with that a little bit tonight. And I would like to say a little bit about intention because, as I mentioned, so if we're in a victim mentality, it feels like things are just happening to us and there's nothing we can do about it. Sometimes the only thing we can do about it is to set the intention of surrender. And we talked about that. I think that was last week. We talked about surrender. We talked about letting go. We've talked about that a bunch over the course of these 60 episodes. But the intention that I love, that I bring up over and over again, is for the highest good. So setting an intention for the highest good is like having a high beam flashlight that's just going to bring clarity to your way forward. If you shine that down into your swamp, it's going to bring clarity to wherever you shine it. But that intention has to be set fully for the highest good. You have to really mean that. That's what intention really means. Intention is really meaning something from the bottom of your soul, from the bottom of your body for the highest good, and then letting it go. And that's so difficult. And that's why we practice. And we're going to practice setting some intentions tonight. So how do we bring clarity? What are the ways that we can bring clarity to a space, to our bodies, to our internal being? And one of the great ways to bring clarity to your body is movement. I have these new beautiful crystal cards, and I pulled a crystal card right before I started making my notes, and it said, get up and move. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And it's so funny because I was going to mention movement tonight, but I hadn't really done any movement today. So we're going to do we've done that before, kind of a little bit of shaking. Intentional movement absolutely brings clarity. And again, that word intentional is so important. So you could go for a 50-mile run and get absolutely no clarity. You could go for a 3-minute walk with intention and completely clarify your mental space. Especially, I think physical movement is really good for mental clarity. You can clarify your physical space. You can clarify your emotional space. But again, it has to be done with intention. And then I feel like every week I could say, like, I give you 3 guesses as to what's going to help. And the first 2 don't count because I'm going to say sound because we say that every week. But it's so true. And what I love so much about sound is that you don't have to work with intention so much when you have sound. Sound does that work for you. You can just set the intention that this sound will clear the space, and then the sound just does it. You can let go much more. And I use sound to clear space rather than a lot of people use smoke or smudging, and I've got asthma. I think I mentioned that already. But when I go into a space to clear, I use sound along with intention. So those are 2 really powerful ways to clear. Movement is a powerful way to clear. And essentially, anything that gets us outside of that ego mind can bring clarity. Meditation, again, anything done with intention, because intention is clarity. Intention brings clarity. So if you're feeling muddy, if you're feeling unsure, if you're feeling like you just don't know what's happening, you don't know where you're going, you feel stuck, all of the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of months, intention will bring clarity. And clarity shows you how to get into that expansion that will bring harmony. And harmony is just another word for healing. So tonight's meditation is going to be a really good one. We're going to go to our waterfall of joy, and I'm going to use a sound bath. We did a sound bath a month or so ago. I'm going to send sound into your physical being, your mental and emotional, your energetic space, the space that you're in right now. That sound, that vibration is going to come in to clear. And we're going to work with intention through this whole process. We're going to set some intentions to bring more clarity into our lives. And as I was talking, you likely kind of came, like right now I feel like I'm struggling with physical clarity, and I know that. I have mental clarity, I have pretty good emotional clarity, but physically I'm still trying to work through this intuitive eating, and I'm like, what do you want? And why does my belly hurt? And what did I do? And I'm letting go of all these years of programming about what I should and shouldn't eat. And it's definitely a process, but it's getting better. And I start to notice now that I pay attention, awareness and intention are bringing me clarity. And I noticed, okay, like, maybe that wasn't the best choice to eat. My body doesn't feel so good. Maybe that was, maybe if I had listened ahead of time. I went to make myself breakfast this morning and I was going to put cheese in something, and I picked the cheese up and my body was like, no cheese. And I was like, oh, really? But I actually listened and I put the cheese back. And that's a huge step forward in clarity for me physically. So we're going to work a little bit with whatever area of clarity you feel like you're struggling with. And it could be all of the above. We're going to set intentions, I think, probably in each area that I mentioned. But let yourself be aware of maybe where your frequencies are muddy, and allow the sound to come into the space. Allow the intention to come into the space to bring some clarity. And I guarantee you, your life will change dramatically. Even with one small moment of clarity, it's like a blind person who sees for the first time. It's like somebody came and cleared your whole windshield off, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's all these other streets and trees, and look at all these things. It's really revelatory bringing clarity into your system. And we're going to do that right now. So let's meditate together. And I will say that different types of sound function differently. So I've got a high-pitched chime here, and I like to use that to kind of stir things up. We're going to do a little bit of movement. We're going to do a little bit of high-pitched chime, kind of stir up the energy to kind of like, it's like you've got algae on the bottom of your pool and you're going to move your feet along and then like the whole thing's going to be cloudy. And then we're doing that purposefully because then we're going to bring big, beautiful Tibetan bowl in to clarify. It's like dropping a chlorine tab in the water and then like, whoof, all of a sudden the water's going to be clear. Get really comfortable for this meditation. If you'd like to lie down, it's absolutely permissible. It's always permissible, but sometimes I urge you to stay in a position in which you won't fall asleep. But this meditation will actually work whether you're conscious or unconscious. And sometimes this kind of energy work actually works better when the conscious mind is out of the way. So get really cozy, get comfortable. If you're sitting up, maybe you want to support yourself. Maybe you want to rest your head back on something or cover up with a blanket. Just get really comfortable and cozy for this meditation. Take a few of those deep cleansing oxytocin breaths to bring some clarity, some ease into your body, into your emotional and mental fields. Breathing in deeply through the nose, letting the belly float out. And then sighing with that audible ha sound, vibrating that vagus nerve into the parasympathetic, into that ease and relaxation mode. Take a few more deep breaths. Just allow yourself to settle here, letting go of anything that happened up until this moment, letting go of what happens after we're done here, just letting yourself come fully present. Take a couple of breaths into any areas of tension that you're holding in the body. And then gently let yourself move a little bit into those areas. If you've got tension in your shoulders, maybe you want to shrug them a few times. Maybe you want to move your head and neck around a little bit. Just go with your intuitive flow here. Let your body move whatever way it likes. Maybe you want to stand up and jump around. Maybe you want to shake your arms and your hands. Maybe you shake your feet a little bit. We're just stirring up some energy here. And continue to do that. You can do this in a chair without moving. Just shake your hands and your wrists, shake your arms a little bit, gently shake your head back and forth. Just continue to shake, continue to move. Maybe you shaking your chest and your abdomen and your hips. Just really kind of take a minute to kind of shake your whole body out. Just stirring up any muddiness off the bottom of our lake, of our swamp, letting it really move around so that we can clear it. If it's stuck, we can't clear it. So we're just unsticking some energy here. Just a last few seconds here. Moving the body, moving into any areas of tension. Maybe you actually circle your arms, circle your ankles and wrists. Maybe you get up and shake your hips a little bit, or you're on the ground and you can kind of circle, roll your hips and your pelvis. It's getting a little bit of movement going here before we settle completely. And then take a nice big oxytocin breath. Really sigh it out. Let yourself settle. If there's any more areas that you need to move, do that before settling. But gently allow yourself to settle completely here, to relax, to feel heavy and at ease. Drawing your energetic sanctuary to you now. If that's unfamiliar to you, just imagine that you're sitting in the most beautiful and safest space you can imagine. This is a special space just for you. No one else can come into this space if they're not invited. And within this beautiful space lies your waterfall of joy. So if you're familiar with that, go there now or bring it to you. Just sit kind of on the banks of this body of water. Listen to the beautiful sound of the waterfall. If you've never been here before, just let yourself be guided to this space. The water that comes down in this waterfall is divine joy. It's that unconditional love that is the clearest of all frequencies. That highest good that flows down from that source of all that is, comes into your waterfall and down into the most beautiful, clearest body of water you've ever seen. Take a look down into your pool now and notice how clear and clean it is. This body of water is continually refreshed with this flow of this clearest of frequencies, of energies, this unconditional love that is divine energy. Let yourself feel really settled now here. Maybe you still feel stirred up, and that's okay. We're going to clarify any of that mud in the next step of this process. Just allow yourself a minute to get really present next to your waterfall here. And as I begin the sound bath, as I begin to send these frequencies into your energetic field that will clear this muddiness, that will invite in this clearest unconditional love, this clearest frequency of divine energy, step into your pool, that beautiful clear pool of water, and begin to wash yourself in this water. Begin to bring it up your arms and your hands. Maybe you dunk yourself completely down. Just let yourself be in this water, in this cleansing water, as this sound comes into your space. Continue to enjoy this beautiful pool of water that's continually refreshed with divine energy, with light. Perhaps you're just floating here effortlessly on your back as this sound comes into your space. Slowly make your way now to the waterfall itself. Let that beautiful flow of water pour over your head and your shoulders and your torso, your hips and your legs and your feet. Let that water come inside your body, into your mental space, this beautiful flowing light, this clearest frequency of love. Let it come into your mental state now, your mental being, your brain space. Let this flow of unconditional love, of that clear frequency, wash that muddiness away as you allow it into your heart space, into your emotional body, bringing so much clarity, letting go of any fear here, any anger, any guilt and shame, allowing this beautiful light, this beautiful love to flow into your emotional body, into your heart space. Allowing this beautiful flow of light and love to come into your belly, into your hips, allowing it to come into the full physical body now. All the parts of your body, any areas of tension that you've been carrying, any areas of frequency that you've picked up. Let this water wash those out of your body now, through the head and the neck and the shoulders, the chest and the belly and the hips, the legs, the feet. So much beautiful, clear energy flowing into your body now. Continue to stand in this beautiful flow of light, cleansing water, of cleansing love. Let this clarity wash over you on all levels of your being. Let it cleanse your spirit, reminding you of where you came from, of this stuff that you're made of. Let it cleanse your mind. Let it cleanse your emotions. Let it cleanse your body. And then set the intention to bring this clarity back out into the world with you. Affirm out loud with me, I am clear in my thoughts, and I release my thoughts for the highest good. I am clear in my emotions, and I allow my emotions to flow for the highest good. I am clear in my body, and I allow all muddiness to leave for the highest good. I am clear in my spirit, and I know that I am made of divine energy. And now come back to whatever area called you. You can always repeat this meditation, so just pick the one that's most in your mind today, that came forward most, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. And let that beautiful light, that clear frequency of love flow directly into whatever aspect of your being needs it the most in this moment. Set the intention to be brave here. It takes bravery to allow this clarity into your field, but there is so much reward in it. Set the intention to be clear in this aspect of your being, in whatever way comes to you intuitively. Affirm it out loud if at all possible. And continue to allow this waterfall of joy and bliss and love, this clearest frequency of divine energy, to flow into your body, around your body. Let it come into the space around your body, into the room that you're sitting in. Let this clear light come into your entire living space, wherever that may be. Let it come into your relationships with other people. Let it come into your workplace. Let it come into your family. Invite this clarity into the entire world now, allowing this beautiful light that exists in every single one of us to recognize each other. Recognize this light in everyone you encounter, and it will bring you clarity, and it will bring you joy, and it will bring you love. As you're ready, very slowly step out of your waterfall, back into that beautiful pool, noticing that anything that was washed off of you was instantly transformed into that clarity, into that love and joy and light. And then stepping out onto the banks of your water, noticing how clean you feel, how clear you feel. Let yourself breathe for a moment and just enjoy this feeling of clarity, this feeling of being clean inside and out. Take a nice cleansing breath here if you'd like, and release any last bits of that muddy frequency from your being. All aspects of your being clear now. And just before we step out of the meditation, ask your intuition if there are any messages about clarity you're meant to hear in this moment or receive in whatever way they come. And then just give yourself a minute to see if anything comes up. As you're ready, you can release your energetic sanctuary. Or if you'd like, you can stay here for as long as you want. But either way, begin to remember that you're in a room, that you're in your body, coming fully present into the body. And affirm with me out loud, I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and I invite clarity in all aspects of my being. I am fully present in my body, and I am divine clarity. As you're ready now, you can slowly begin to move a little bit. Flex your fingers and your toes, maybe move your head and neck around again. Just coming fully back into the body, into this moment, into the conscious mind. Bringing that beautiful clarity with you, bringing that beautiful clarity forward into the rest of your evening and your week, bringing it into all the encounters you have, all the situations you encounter. Letting yourself be intentional as often as possible. Letting go of judgment around not being intentional, but reminding yourself to step back into this clarity, to step back into intentionality in each moment as you move forward. Take one more deep oxytocin breath, really drawing that breath all the way down into the belly. And sigh it out. Release any last muddiness, any tension that you can let go of. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thank you for having the strength to step into clarity. And I invite you to bring this clarity with you into the rest of the evening and your week moving forward. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. Have a crystal clear rest of your week. And I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.